Richland County Public Works Standing Committee to order. First item of business is proof of notification. Yes. It has been properly notified and posted. Agenda approval, 14-point agenda. Looking for approval on the agenda, please. Mr. Manning. Second by Mr. Yeah. McGuire. All those in favor of the agenda as posted and printed, signify by saying aye. All right, we have an agenda. Previous minutes from the meeting on June 9th. Everybody had a chance to look at those? Any additions or corrections? If not, I would also entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Mr. Cosgrove, Mr. Manning, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign, okay. We're going to public comment, number 5. That'd be Miss Tiffany. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Can you, please? My name is Tiffany Olson, and I wanted to express interest in the Buena Vista parcel that's listed on the agenda. And my understanding is at this meeting, some decisions are made about it, so I'm just here to hear what the next steps are. Unaware of that process.
Okay, that will be coming up further down the agenda, if you have time to stay. We could actually move to that, right? Anybody else have public comment? Why don't we, while you're here, and we'll turn it over. We'll move down to 11A. Everybody moving down to 11A. Tax deed parcel number 024-3343-4100. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Tax deed parcel number 006-0634-4100. Town of Buena Vista. Mr. Jeff.
All right, you can hear me. Cool. All right, so I am here to provide an update on the tax deed parcels the county recently took ownership of. 2 of them are currently vacant. That is the property in the town of Buena Vista and one in the town of Richwood. The third one is currently inhabited in the town of Ithaca. So until that one is no longer inhabited, that one's going to be waiting in the weeds for a bit. All 3 property owners were sent notice on Friday the 15th that they no longer own their property. They do have 30 days from the date of notice to take ownership of their property, and that's by county ordinance 12-18, if I remember correctly. So rightfully and truly, we cannot advertise these properties for sale until at least August 16th. I did go out and tour the 2 that are vacant with Jason Glassbrenner. Clint appears to be attempting to open the file with that. Long story short, we'll start with the Buena Vista property, the old motel. This building, the buildings are severely dilapidated. There are multiple rooms within the motel where the floor is completely caved in, and other rooms that are not caved in. You can see there. I'll stand up because I can. This is where the floor is supposed to be. That is a door. Here, the floor is completely caved in. The only reason it looks like it's not is because the debris is piled that high. This should be a floor here. We can move on to the next. Again, this is where the floor should be. And this is representative of multiple rooms within the motel. What floors are not completely caved into the crawl space? Clint, if you want to go to the next picture. So you can see here, they are severely sagged. Typically, beds don't fall to the center like that. So this is representative of nearly every room within the motel. There are a choice 1 or 2 that are not, do not appear to be sagging at this time. I did not take the liberty of going inside those rooms. The house, every window, or the majority of the windows appear to be broken out. There is evidence of black mold on the walls in multiple areas and animal infiltration. As far as rehabbing the property, I don't know if there's value in it, in my opinion, to best protect the county. moving forward is if we do sell it, it needs to be sold on the condition that the buildings will be raised and cleaned up. Given that information, I don't know that, and that we have to wait until August 16th to actually advertise for sale. It is my opinion that we should hold off on any official decisions regarding this property today until the August Public Works meeting. This will give me time to confer with Attorney Windle on the best process moving forward to proceed with sale of the property. Moving on to the town of Richwood. Sure.
You use the mic. Sorry. Should be on. It's on. Just give it a second.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I was thinking when we talked about it at the meeting that there was another description, like another location in the county that was also owned by the same people. Am I just remembering incorrectly?
Owned by the people that own the motel?
Yeah, that owned the same property and we took it as a tax deed, but I was thinking that there was also another location somewhere
So
in addition to this area.
we took 3 properties at that meeting.
Mhm.
One was in the town of Buena Vista that was owned by what's called UMS Ventures. They're currently out of New York or unfindable. That is the only parcel in the county that they
That they-
currently own.
okay.
Yep. The other 2 parcels are owned by different
Yeah, I
landowners
understood
or
that, but I was
entities.
just thinking there was more than just that small area that they owned.
No,
okay.
and that is actually a pretty sizable parcel. It's just that is the only parcel in the county that
Okay,
they did own.
thank you.
Yes.
Has there been an abatement done on that as far as the lead paint and asbestos?
We would not have a record of that, to my knowledge. Would that be a county?
Hey Dave, do you have any comments on the motel? Hold on, if you do, come forward, take a microphone, and please address everyone.
So the information that I could add to this meeting is I did go speak with Sextonville Sanitation. My major concern looking in this, being interested as well, is the lift station. Sextonville Sanitation has half the sanitation that comes from that hotel. The lift station itself is on the property of Peaches, who's owned by another individual. So that's a major concern too, being the swamp land and everything there. The concern is, they said in order for them to open that back up to Sextonville Sanitation, the pump in the lift station would have to be replaced. The section that goes to the Peaches building, is taking on groundwater right now. That's the reason they closed it. It was taking on too much water, basically. Those 2 repairs alone, they said somewhere, upwards of $70,000. And then as well as from that lift station, under the bridge, all the way over to that white building, they're looking about 750, piping as well would have to be replaced as well. So there's a lot that would have to go into that hotel to get it up to, par, basically. And from what they said, there's only 2 companies in the state of Wisconsin that would be able to perform those, inspections and everything required.
Is that property in floodplain?
I reviewed with Mike Bindle in zoning. The floodplain goes pretty much up to the front door of the motel, but the building itself is just outside the floodplain. I do not remember if the house or the former office is in the floodplain or not, but the motel building itself is not.
Anybody else with questions on that one? We will be just putting it on next month's agenda, waiting for more information and some advice from Attorney Wendell. We'll go to the Richwood one. I was actually down there last night as well, and you have about the same pictures that I took, so.
Yeah, so this one is kind of a scrapper's paradise, for lack of a better term. The property is completely overgrown. There are, I don't know, approximately 4 or 5 vehicles strewn about, as well as just random scrap and old items. One Alice tractor. The building itself.
Property value.
Duly noted. The building itself, while it looks rough on the outside, is appears for all intensive purposes relatively sound. Ignore the porch. But the building, so these are wooden I-beam joists. There does not appear to be any water damage to them. The foundation is poured concrete. The floor in the basement is poured concrete. It's finished with the appropriate saw cuts. There does not appear to be significant water damage in the basement. I did tour the inside. It is full of stuff, but there is not a rancid smell as if it would have been damaged by water and sealed over time. However, it does very well appear that whoever lived here left one day and just never came home. It is full of every possession that they apparently owned at the time. That being said, it does have a metal roof. There does not appear to be water damage within the building. There does not appear to be an animal infestation. All windows are intact. The ceiling tiles that have fallen appear to be from humidity more than direct water damage. From what I've measured on the GIS map, I didn't have a 100-foot tape with me that day, but it appears to be about a 2,400 square foot house with underground electric service and telephone to the house, which is currently disconnected. However, it is severely overgrown. You can only drive about just off the highway, maybe about 20 feet before you run into the brush. Again, with this one, I'm not sure what to do with. I'd feel more comfortable gathering more information on how we want to go about getting rid of this property.
Yeah, the next thing I did see out by that red van was one of the vent pipes for the septic. So we could have Mr. Bindle check into the last time it was ever, that maybe, and I have no idea. I did not find a well, but I didn't spend a lot of time there, so.
I spoke to him about this. I can't remember when he said the septic was last permitted, but there is a well somewhere on the property as well. And while you're out there, you're not gonna just stumble across it, and you might trip on it by accident, but you're not gonna find it by sight.
I do have a party that had contacted me once I let one of the neighbors know that it's county was going to take ownership. So I do have a name of an interested party possibly. So, but that will be put on next month as well. So
Yep.
just more for information for everybody on the committee to start thinking about what we're going to do with these two parcels. The Ithaca one you said is still inhabited. So we're,
Yep. They just got the notice. We will proceed next with an eviction notice to go that route, and that's going to take however long that takes. With this property here as well, there is a potential that the county might actually make some proceeds on it based off of our back taxes and costs incurred, which also has its own new a can of worms with the state law being passed that we can't keep it. So there will be a little bit of prep work that goes into this and more documentation than might typically otherwise.
anybody with any other questions on either one of these? Highway 60 right next to Larry Hamilton. Mr. McGuire?
Wondered, they say there's enough preservatives in a Twinkie to last 100 years. So I wondered, did you find any Twinkies?
Well, I did not open the fridge, but it looked like what was ever in there leaked out onto the floor. I'll leave that up to anybody on this committee if they'd like to investigate further.
Anything else from you, sir?
If there's no further questions for me, that is all at this time.
All right, you can be released.
Thank you.
Let's move back up to Barb. Do you want to do administrative report? Please. Number 6.
So I just have a couple things to let the committee know. I don't have anything for you today. However, in the next few months, you should expect to be seeing me come forward with some proposals. I just talked to Clinton today about a switch that we'll be purchasing. We're actually going to put it in the sheriff's department, and the movement of the sheriff's department switches down to the new area where EMS will be vacating to accommodate land information going into that space. But Clinton can approve any expenditures under 10,000. So any of those smaller ones you won't see. I will be purchasing several computers probably in November. I'm gonna wait until the end of the year. Hopefully availability gets better, and then we'll deploy those out through the different departments that don't have funding lines or sources separate. I don't have the other expenditures, but there are several that'll be coming forward in the next few months.
Anybody with questions for Barb? If not, we'll move on to highway number 7. Thank you, Barb.
All right, so with it being most of the way through July, we've had a major uptick in the amount of work we've done this year, so it shows in the expenditures for this month. Obviously, the grand total for expenditures was $733,799 or $779.59. But to go down through and explain some of it, obviously you have payroll, some of the bigger expenditures, fuel, 2 different deliveries, 1 diesel, and down below $2,275 with gas. Metal culverts, that was basically for inventory. You'll see another charge for that down the list. That was for the E project of the double barrel box culvert replacement. Cold mix, that's going to be partial reimbursement from the state. You also have, see some of the other bigger ones. The big one on the list is Scott Construction for $179,093.84. Keep in mind, we did have a major increase in jobs we did for townships this year. So about 143,000 of that will be reimbursed by the state and townships. The remaining balance was for our chip sealing projects, the wedging and everything we do on roads. Sherwin Industries down here for 27,000. That's the tar that we purchased for the crack sealing. And again, that was a complete state purchase basically. So we'll have reimbursement for that as well. And the last big one for Tri-County pulverizing on BR, 11,390. That's what I have for that. And again, keep in mind, a lot of this we pay for upfront. A lot of this we're going to see in reimbursement.
Anybody with questions for Commissioner Elder? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve bills as presented. Mr. Manning? Mr. Cosgrove, any discussion on the bills? If not, all those in favor of paying the bills, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Bills have been paid or will be paid. Project update.
All right, again, I mentioned that it's been a very big increase in the amount of work we're doing. I'll start off with state because those are the big ones that are kind of happening. So Highway 60, you'll notice that all the milling's been completed and the first base layer is done. Friday, they are going to be doing the test strip for the final layers of asphalt, and then they'll proceed forward on Highway 60 from there. Again, I think it was a 70-day working process for this. So by end of September, we should see Highway 60 almost at completion. Highway 193, yesterday they went in and they were milled it and they were done by about noon. And today and tomorrow they'll be paving, and then center line on Friday, and hopefully by the weekend they'll be able to open up Highway 193. State crews at our department are in the middle of sealing bridges. They're also cleaning and applying riprap to about a half a dozen bridges around the county, and you're going to see a big improvement in water drainage and things underneath some bridges because they moved a lot of material. Couple examples is 80 and C. You got Highway 14 right by the Legion. They're going to add riprap, 14 and G. And then there's several other bridges, but basically just maintenance, scouring, repairs underneath the bridges and earth moving to allow more water flow during flood events. County, we're still working on the E-Bridge replacement. That's going extremely well. The old structure was successfully removed. The 2 culverts are in place. Crews right now are in the middle of pouring the concrete and forming. They have the concrete poured on one side. Both aprons are done, and they're working on the other side currently. So I'd say within the next couple of weeks, you'll see that little bit of project wrapping up. Hold in place process, which was a new process that the county hasn't done in the past on County Road E, so far has been a huge success. They went in within a week. They were able to mill up and relay about 3 miles of asphalt as a base layer. And then after starting next month, we'll actually apply the last 3 inches of asphalt to do that. And you should end up with basically, in layman's terms, a Cadillac road when it's done. BR, we had to pulled the trigger a little sooner than expected just because of scheduling with all these places. So we went ahead and got that pulverized, and crews are out there currently reshaping, packing that road to get ready for paving. Sand and salt shed, that groundbreaking commenced. We currently, today, they finished up the foundation pour. So next week we're going to commence backfilling, and then we'll have a meeting with Scott Hartman from Greystone to proceed forward with the assembling of the building itself. And then the H Bridge, they're currently pouring the concrete wall abutments, and everything's looking good on that. There's not much new there. So that's what we have.
Josh, do we have an estimated completion of the salt sand shed?
Right now, I would estimate about 5 weeks remaining on that project.
Okay. Most of the guys, people that were on the highway committee previously, before we combined into what we are now, we talked about having an open house out there, possibly in that shed, but we'll keep it on the radar somewhat.
And we are still planning on doing that. I'd like to finish up all the projects, and basically when we hit September and we're wrapping things up while the weather's still good, we'll plan on having open house at the highway department so everybody can see what the highway department is, what we have, and kind of what we do. I think it's been too long since the general public have been too involved in what actually takes place out there. So we want to be an open book as much as possible and explain where their tax money's going on a larger department as such as ourselves.
Thank you. Any questions for Josh on any of the projects? Mr. Manning?
We'll say I traveled County E as they did some relay and afterwards, very impressed with it. Going to be interested in how long it holds up. Certainly the way to go if it does hold up.
If it does hold up the way they say, they're expecting a 20-year road, if not longer. It's a good process. It really is. It's been time proven in other counties and other states they've done this, but recently nobody's really done that around here, local counties. So we were kind of the guinea pig, but it's nice to try out a new process that the county can maybe utilize in the future at a cost savings. It saves us a lot of manpower and labor as far as machinery and operations out there to actually get the road to grade before we pave it. It does it all in one shot.
I would encourage anybody to watch them if you're not holding them up, because it's amazing what they do in such a short period of time.
It's worth noting too that the original estimate, because of what they ran into down there and because of how well it went, we were able to save about $19,000 over that estimate. So no, the road actually wasn't really all that thin. That we estimated about 4 inches deep, and 4 inches took you right to the start of the base. They were able to leave a little bit behind, which is what they wanted to do. What really saved us is that the seal coating and the preventive maintenance we've done in the past, that oil was still there. So they were able to cut back on the amount of emulsion oil they were applying to it. And then obviously had a little bit of time saving too.
Anybody else with anything for Josh? If not, let's move on to item number 8, action items. Discussion and possible action on use of courthouse grounds. I believe that is in your iPad.
Mr. Chair, looking for today for a motion to allow Richland County Ministerial Alliance to utilize courthouse lawn on September 3rd through 4th for community prayer and scripture reading event. Background on this item: Richland County Ministerial Alliance would like to host a community prayer and scripture reading event over the Labor Day weekend, September 3rd and 4th, utilizing the courthouse lawn. The event would begin in the morning of September 3rd and continue through the night into September 4th. The Alliance would like to set up 2 small tents and plans on using a small PA system for scripture readings. No access to the courthouse building is needed. Point of contact is Reverend Jonathan Young. We've entertained them, I think, for the last 3 years, Mr. Chair.
If you have questions, we have, I think, as long as I've been dealing with the property committee, which is, pushing 6 years, I believe that possibly, and I don't know if it's the same group, but questions on this? Anybody? Mr. Cockrell moves to approve. Mr. Cooley seconds. Any further discussion? If not, everybody in favor of approving this as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Perfect. Number 9.
Mr. Chair, looking today for motion to accept to recommend utilization of remaining Fund 75 Background of this item is looking to appropriate approximately $93,000 that is going to not be utilized by land conservation in the supplemental dams that were proposed for the original borrowing. Looking to push this then towards $8,391 towards heat exchangers, and this is the increase in pricing. We budgeted for heat exchangers for this year quite a while ago, and we thought it was about, forget what we averaged, but the prices went up quite a bit. So in order to cover those extras, to get 3 heat exchangers to replace in our rotation to keep up with heat exchangers, it's an extra $8,391. Looking for the $6,000 for 48 port that Barb had talked about earlier. Now this is saying Fund 75 and 92 is kind of interlocked within it, but if you can approve it for Fund 75, and then we can fungibility it with the 92 funds to make sure we can appropriate it towards this project. And then there are approximately $78,609 that are recommending that it goes towards courthouse window replacement. That was some of the initial borrowing. We kind of reappropriated it for different purposes, but now with the dams coming off, recommend putting it back into that. Cheryl's been working with Randy and vendor, forget the name of the vendor, but they're looking at the best solution for us is going to be to take out the inserts and put the inserts in rather than the whole windows, mostly on that south side where they're all cloudy and have moisture. There is one of the windows, though, that we might have to actually address trimming and framing and all that, but for the most part, try to get the most bang out of the buck. It looks like it's going to be inserts. Cardinal glass, of course, is backed up, so it could take some time, but recommend appropriation on those items. If we do have motion to recommend these, it would go to finance and personnel. Policy is in their control. Final decision from them. Mr. Chair.
Various questions on the reappropriation of funds?
So the supplemental dam projects, to the best of my knowledge, began, delayed. Ken went to Viroqua, and now we have a little bit of support that I think from DATCAP, in which there was a person that could help us come in and engineering and do them. She went out on extended FMLA leave, which left us with no real state support as well. So the idea that we're going to be able to get the dams and put together and the project complete by next March, when that Fund 75 is due, out of time.
So the dams will still be something.
It still remains a problem to address. Correct, in order to make sure that we're spending that fund down.
These dams were going to be new ones, Mark, that we went out. I was still on the committee for a while before we switched up, but what we did, we went out and asked landowners up in those areas, and I think they had located maybe 3 and then everything switched. So it's not the repair money this was earmarked for actual new dams. So maybe in the future we could see, but
We're still running risk on our primary dams if we were to get an extensive amount of water. We don't have that extra barrier to help protect them.
Change from 4.
Correct.
They were just going to, instead of trying to fix the current thing. It's off the cheap. It's really stuff.
yep, that was the plan, and they still have the repair money, and I don't think the majority of them, they're on a rotating inspection schedule, so I believe the majority of them are in pretty good shape, and I think it's 2 years yet before the majority of them get inspected again. I don't think we're too bad a shape there. So any other questions on this? If not, I would entertain a motion to appropriate this money. Mr. Cooley, seconded by Ms. Fleming. Any further discussion? All those in favor of reappropriating the money from land conservation into Fund 75, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have that done. Courthouse project report.
Mr. Chair, if you can ignore, and please do not accept the one that I have in the file. I uploaded the wrong document. Embarrassingly enough, I've had even an extra week now to correct it, and I have not, so I do apologize. I'll give you an oral report, though, on the items and the updates. First item being ambulance. We've initiated now weekly meetings with our ambulance, MIS, zoning, and land conservation in efforts to keep track on the many moving pieces. Right now, they're still anticipating moving out on September 1st. and being operationally set on September 6th in the new ambulance garage. That leaves us, knock on wood, everything works out. We have some time then on when land conservation and zoning then occupy that space. We're anticipating to get it cleaned out, prepped, see if we have to do anything different with wiring in their anticipation. Funds have been kind of reappropriated away from doing any type of constructional, moving any type of wall types of things, but trying to use that time also to clean carpets, clean floors, and do a once over on it. We may have them in there tentatively set mid-October or so. When we get them in, then working with MIS pieces, though, obviously, too, though, we have to get a lot of the technical aspects of moving land conservation off of the federal system onto a county system. Then having that switch downstairs, that extra 24, should make it pretty seamless, though, for zoning on their move, knock on wood. Past that, then, too, as Barb mentioned, she's getting into her budgeting season. In the realm of budgeting, we're also going to incorporate this year, or attempt to incorporate, a county tech account, or a budget, if you will, in trying to centralize some of our costs. So rather than having everything underneath a MIS budget, we're breaking out those expenses that are kind of organizational wide and be able to start tracking our organizational expenses separate from MIS as an end user. Water fountains, as you may have noticed, they are ripped out. We did have Precision in here the last few days, getting it reconfigured for our bottle fillers. This is a project that's being executed underneath the DOJ grant for COVID and contagion mitigation. We did have a follow-up meeting then too with folks from law enforcement and our new judge and clerk of circuit court this week on how to reappropriate some of our DOJ funds. Grant is extended out through the end of this year. We just don't have capacity to try to get in. We had dreams of trying to get in a key fob hard access system, but I've got MIS stretched thin between the radio tower project and now a PSAP project. We just don't have the manpower to do it. Switching gears then and looking to see if we can reappropriate those funds primarily rather than door locks, to see if we can use door assists. We can update some of our ADA accessibilities and using elbow, shoulder, bump button pads to help with assisting open up, like our fire doors going in between the two buildings and some of the restrooms, and getting updates even on our entry access ones. County key, our county or courthouse key project still remains on hold. We don't have any action on that. The roof, we do have our forms now signed for that change order on the flat roof, waiting for Interstate to come back on when we're on the docket. Told you about the window inserts, metal siding. Cheryl has been working with Randy and pushing out to see if we can get a different vendor. I think there's an Amish vendor that might be able to help us with a solution on getting the metal siding above the doors replaced. Land swap on O is at a hold. In talking with Commissioner Elder, there's a project that's already on the docket for that. If we touch it, it's going to impact our environmental study. Josh, do you have anything else that address on that one?
Yeah, if they proceed forward with that land swap, it's basically going to set us back to ground zero, and it's not just going to cost a couple $100s, it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and delays in years before we proceed forward with that project. So it's recommended to hold off on the land swap until we settle everything out.
Excellent. And then on our campus roof project that we've kind of kept an eyesight on as well, finance and personnel did take Education Standing Committee took action on their last meeting to recommend that finance and personnel find a funding source to repair the copper top roof, the flat surface of it. The pitch part, I think, was repaired in the hailstorm, but the flat part and the fire dampers, there's actually light coming through, and there's a kiddie pool catching it on stage. It was deferred in my plan based on not knowing the fate of our relationship with the campus. They recommended that that be considered and put back in. That is my report, Mr. Chair.
Anybody with questions on the report? Let's move on down to number 12, discussion and possible action on the recommendation of capital improvement projects.
And to keep you abreast on this, so we have rules and strategic planning at their last meeting took a look at the capital improvement plan. Part of the strategic plan calls for like a comprehensive building plan. So rules and strategic plan kind of took a look at it and a couple kicks on what they thought. They requested that all the standing committees Also take a look at the plan and make any types of recommendations that you might have through formal action on it. I would defer to Josh perhaps to kind of talk through the highway aspect of it. I can cover building maintenance, and Barb will probably have to help me on the MIS side of it. Josh, if you're willing and able to talk, I will try to share, but it's very tiny. You're probably going to have best luck viewing it on your own. It's slide 3 of 39 on the capital improvement plan document number 12.
Can you hit the plus? It'll make it a little bit bigger.
Better there? Are we looking there?
Better.
There we go. So just let me, to brief the sheet here, the idea is this is a plan to try to capture the department. Everything underneath the estimated expenses, of course, the cost of the project. As you hit your greens, that's your different funding sources. Left, and you have your annual operations levy. You have your different borrowing mechanisms underneath the general obligation debt. The darker ones then is if you have a foundation or partnership funding it, fed or state grant funding it, or some other type of service fees. And then the deferred column is the ones that are currently recommended to not fund and not do. So that being said, if you would please, sir.
Yes, sir. So looking at the federal and state funding grants, we utilize several different options when we're looking at roads. So we look at what's called LRIP, Local Road Improvement Program, which falls underneath 3 different categories: CHI funding, CHI D, and CHI S, which basically stands for County Highway Improvement Program. So one is this County Highway Improvement, it's a regular allocated amount, and then you have discretionary, which is an 80-20 split, and the regular CHI funding, CHI, is just 50-50, and then the CHI S is a 90-10 split. So we've utilized those for these oncoming years in the future, and basically what we use as far as the county's expenditures is matching funds for those, which is almost identified in the short-term borrowing, the 500,000. It's not just being put into one particular road or one particular improvement. It's being used to spread out to match those funds so we can tackle multiple different projects. Currently, the county is on a 57-year rotation on being able to address over 300 miles worth of roads. So that basically means we do one road, and then 57 years from now, we can finally circle around and get to that road again before we have time to get to the other roads. Plow trucks, that's a reoccurring thing that we're going to have every year. Equipment replacement, price on that stuff, of course, continues to rise. So we have to plan for that each year with a rise in how much we're setting aside for that. Future roads that we're going to be doing, County Road O, that's going to be one that's coming up in years to come here. We're hoping next year, but it could get pushed back. Next year we have County Highway 00, which is that 90-10 split. And then we have County Road W, which is a regular 50-50 split. And then we're also looking at County Road J and County Road A, possibly an N. And that's what those figures kind of represent, is how much money we're putting into those roads and then what we're utilizing as far as government grants, if you will, with a mixture of the short-term borrowing and everything to match those funds.
There, if you had any questions, Mr. Chair, for Josh before we moved on to the next one.
Anything on trucks we ordered?
Just keep getting pushed down the line. We were supposed to have 1 truck built last month, and we were supposed to have 2 trucks built this month. And now we're still don't have verification, but 1 was supposed to be built this month, and the other 2 are supposed to be built in September. So they're still getting pushed down the line. Supposed to be, yeah.
Anybody else with questions for Mr. Elder?
Good.
I would, if I could, Clint. Now, it's important to note that $500,000 a year in the short-term borrowing, being on a 5.5-mile road plan per year with a 57-year cycle, that's actually a really good figure to have. We're comparable with other counties. It's impossible to ever think that we'd be on a 20-year road plan because the funding for that is just, astronomical. We have a good road plan in place, and being able to capture it at $500,000 a year to help bolster those matching funds puts us on a very good, sustainable, and what the taxpayers can stomach as far as what we can do in the future. That makes sense.
I think our talking points, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we wanted to be more aggressive, we wanted to get to like a 20-year type of a plan, we could put more money into for like a short-term funding or some other type of mechanism, but that doesn't necessarily mean though that the state programs of LRIP and CHI and those other things are going to match those. So we're going to end up paying a higher levy contribution into it and not have those matching funds. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. So in order to trying to put more money into it, we're not necessarily going to be able to have those matching funds from the state and grants and everything, as Clint is saying. Basically, those are application processes. You have to be awarded those projects. And if we're not awarded them and we bolster more money into it per year, on the taxpayers' behalf of the county, you're putting more money into it and you're not getting as much out of it at that point, because there is going to be years where we're just not going to have grants, because as we get grants, we fall to the bottom of the list, and counties that didn't get those grants in the past are going to move to the top. So we have to do it at a sustainable rate to be able to utilize the grants as we are awarded them.
John, if we're not doing anything with the new federal program where you had to have some projects bookshelved.
So I did push Richland County forward with trying to do some shelf projects, and the county roads in question for that are County Road A and now looking at County Road N. But what we did utilize for the bill selection of 2023 through 2026 is County Highway O. And it's not looking good for getting bill funding forward, pushing as hard as we can with the state and everything to get that. But what we're finding is all these counties went after it because they said it was going to be a quick, easy fix for money and grant funding. But then the state gets involved, rules got to be met, and it just turns into a mess. And I'm being frank about that. It's just not free money. We have to have the matching funds, and we're doing the best we can. I have projects into that bill funding, but selecting for bill funding is a whole different animal. We'll find out by the end of August, hopefully, whether we were awarded the 2 segments of O that I applied for.
Okay.
If I remember right, if we didn't do something with County O, we had to pay back a bunch of money to the state. Is there a time period on that?
It's called the 10-year rule the state has for when that happens. It means you have 10 years to get that funding, be awarded that funding. And if you don't get awarded that funding and they've already gave you federal dollars for engineering, which Richland County did utilize that federal funding, you turn around and have to pay that money back. Now, we were able to bypass that 10-year rule because we invested into buying 1 parcel of land, which disqualified us from having to pay money back. And right now I'm in the middle of a big battle and everything, if you want to call it that, for the next 2 segments of O, and we're going to do everything we can not to have to pay any money back. And things are looking good on that front. Coming from the feds this morning's meeting, did try to reassure us that the chances of us as a county paying back any money are slim to none at this point.
Very good question, Gary. I think we're ready to move on. Mr. Flynn.
Mr. Chair, working on our county technology budget, working with Director Scott, we tried to lay out, you'll see for each year, we tried to lay out kind of like a format, is almost a checklist that we have each year. Not all the items, of course, are filled in, but again, so we don't lose sight of things as we move from one year to another. These expenses then, again, are looking to use short-term borrowing. Some of the numbers you'll see fall below like a $2,000 amount, but it's seen as kind of, it's a package in its entirety, which then still qualifies it to be considered for a capital project. And the durability on these are more than the 3-year threshold. So some of the big things to kind of be aware of in the first year is, I mean, those are, you're looking at workstation replacement, and you're looking at iPad replacement. The second year, also more routine, but we're looking at some access point replacements. And then in the third year, as we get out to 2026, I think is where we're hitting our switch replacement and switch refresh. Is that correct, Barb?
Yes.
So our 2026, if we're staying on pace, that one's going to get a little expensive for us. And that's kind of where we ended our project there. But again, kind of the mindset with this document, just like for folks that are part of financial planning, is we're using this to kind of set a premise of where our projects are going to line up, but really to help us shape with what borrowing is going to look like for the next year, to allow you the ability to say, no, I don't like that priority, let's move that to the right or do without it, or to reach out into other years and say, boy, I think that we should be doing that now, let's pull that back and put that in there. Courthouse, was there any questions that you had for myself or Barb in regards to MIS on switches and workstations and iPad replacements and NAS storage devices and all those other things that I know that you folks read about in your monthly Week Tech
Yes.
magazines?
Anybody with questions for either Clint or Barb on that? Otherwise, we'll go to the courthouse projects.
Okay, courthouse projects, and bear with me, I gotta find my sheet here.
How far down?
Oh, here we go. I think I got it here. On your document, it's 11 out of 39. Give every minute to get there. So for next year, for 2023, courthouse maintenance, looking to again try to get 3 heat exchangers to keep up with the failing ones that are there. Looking for ceiling repair in the law library and the victims witness room. Now that we have a fresh roof over there, it makes more sense to engage in the repairs for that. Lawn tractor replacement, and then also a signage update in the building. Not only just where people are, but trying to also make sure that we're in compliance with disabilities, and then also making sure we have a do not entrance type of areas if we have any First Amendment auditors is kind of the mindset there. Moving forward into 2024, again, looking at heat exchangers, potentially key and lock system is deferred in the report, and then the chiller under the jail. 2025, heat exchangers again, new carpet paint for the register and deeds, jury room, law library, witness room, and child support and veterans. And then we're also looking into look at a boiler replacement. Petition for trying to get a lift on the east side of the courthouse. Not fully explored, but just kind of, if we were going to try to do an update to have an elevator on that side comparable to what they're doing down the road at the auditorium and making it look nice and presentable with the buildings, about a $1 million bill if we wanted to do something smaller and take out part of the floor and put in a metal shaft, maybe that next down. I know that the reason that their court system is asking for this is when they're having courts at the same time, they don't have any wheelchair accessibility to the small courtroom, which poses a problem. At the moment, deferred, I don't have a better solution, but we may arrive at one as we move forward into future years of planning. 2026, again, heat exchangers. 2027, heat exchangers. Window replacements on the south side is currently on here, but if finance and personnel goes with what we have here, hopefully we can bring some of that down. But to be honest, by 2027, the $50,000 for window replacements will also be most appropriate. And then if we do again, maybe a smaller neck down version of a lift system, maybe $100,000 for a visualize. And if we can get a shaft lift with just a metal type of a framing, if that's a possibility, yet to be determined. So I'll turn it over to yourself, Mr. Chair, if there's any comments on courthouse maintenance projects.
Mr. McGuire.
Why are we having so much trouble with our heat exchanger? It's an item that sometimes will last 50.
The heat exchangers, I don't know the aging on all of them, multiple decades, and we have failing ones. So our goal is to, rather than putting Randy in a situation of my heat exchanger failed in the middle of the winter and then we try to get precision in to fix one, is if we can rotate, purchase 3 and try to get them rotated to keep up with having to have urgent kind of responses. And I think we already have 2 failing ones that are identified for the 3 that are coming in.
With you after the meeting, and just take a look at it.
For the heat exchangers. But they're like all these ones here in the room right here, like all these heat pumps here.
Most of them, they're labeled as heat exchangers. A lot of them are the heat pumps.
Does that make
And I
sense?
believe there's well over 30 of them.
Yes.
Might
Yeah.
be closer to 50 heat pumps in this building.
Multiple size, multiple lengths.
As much the exchangers is the pumps.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Distribution coils.
What pumps water?
Take a look at it.
Not today. Not happening.
They're, like, the examples are the one like right over there. Now that one's in working order. I know there's a failed one down in ambulance. That
We'll get you something set up with Mr. Nelson. Any other questions? Committee members? What else do you have for us, Mr. Plant?
That's what I have. It's asked by, again, rules and strategic planning. If you have any thoughts or recommendations, I mean, if you want to make a motion to agree with what is presented, and please pursue. If you want to make changes on it, you can also make a recommendation for them to consider as well.
Your thoughts? Approve as presented? Mr. McGuire seconds. Motion by Manning, seconded by McGuire. Any further discussion? All those in favor of moving this up signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right. We have somewhat of a capital improvement plan.
Yes, and hopefully we can improve on the improvement plan as we move forward as well.
How about number 13, future agenda items? Anybody? Mr. McGuire would like to have a tour. We can put that on the agenda.
Sure.
And it would be good, I think.
Yeah, I think that's most of
Mr. Cosgrove and I have toured it several times, and Gary, maybe.
facility tour.
Yeah,
We can take a look too, then again, if you're unfamiliar with like the ambulance spaces and how those pieces are moving as well, that'd be most appropriate.
anybody have anything else? If not, let's go to adjournment. Mr. Cooey, seconded by Mr. Manning. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Didn't make the half-hour limit.